Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we are discussing the reasons why your ship from the backlog has not released yet, and why that actually might be a good thing at this point in development. Now, I know that sounds a little silly, so just bear with me. I will explain in just a little bit. But before we get started, if you are enjoying the content, feel free to stick around and subscribe. I do have channel memberships open if you want to go the extra mile, and feel free to join the community Discord. I will have a link for that down below, and I would love to have you there. With that out of the way, though, let's discuss why you have not seen your ship from the backlog release yet. Now, one of the most basic answers I can give before we get into some deeper reasoning is simply the fact that these ships have such a high level of detail that creating them takes an incredibly long amount of time and a lot of development resources. Now, I'll easily say this is that one of the biggest selling points for me personally getting into Star Citizen was the ships. Seeing the interiors, the exteriors, the way you could actually move in and out of the ship, the component bays, the gun racks. I mean, there are just so many little things in these ships that make it so cool, and it's just generally something you don't see in the video game world at the moment. Now, we are seeing it a little bit more in other games, but I will say Star Citizen easily does it the best in my opinion, and it's absolutely one of the biggest reasons why these ships take so damn long to make. I think a good example of this is the Banu Merchantman. Now, there's some more reasons behind why we haven't seen this ship, and we'll get to that in a second. But as we do know, this ship comes in the Banu style, and that's something we have not seen in the game before. And it comes in a very big package. The Banu Merchantman is not a small ship. Just imagine having to create brand new assets for a ship like this, brand new animations, and then get it all working together and get that thing released. I mean, that is going to take quite some time. And if you consider the level of detail that CIG goes for with these spaceships, I mean, I can imagine why the ship could take a very long time, even just when it comes to creating the ship itself. And that really isn't the reason, though, why we haven't seen ships like the Banner Merchantman. I think the very obvious reasoning behind it is that we don't have the gameplay for the ship. And if we're going to be honest here, I don't think we're going to have it for quite some time. That includes ships like the Genesis, the Endeavor, the Nautilus, a lot of these backlog ships that have very unique gameplay ideas behind them aren't going to release anytime soon. And I honestly think that is a very good thing for the health of the game by itself. One living example as to I think why this is a good thing is the 890 jump. The 890 jump is a really cool ship, easily one of the ships that got me on board to Star Citizen. Just having a ship that size with that type of style and with this massive interior. I mean, it was easily one of the coolest things I've ever seen in gaming before. But after my first time actually kind of walking through the ship and seeing what it had to offer and doing like the hijack mission, I mean, it was really cool seeing all those level of details. But then after that, I was kind of just left with what am I supposed to do with this thing? How am I supposed to enjoy it at all? I mean, it's really only good for me bringing around like a lot of people or a small ship in the hangar or just going and doing like bunker missions with the thing. I mean, there really is no purpose behind the 890 jump yet. Now, again, I know players can have a ton of fun with this thing in, sandbox activities, setting things up for org play and whatnot. I've seen many times people use the 890 jump before we had like the Polaris and Idris. They used it as their kind of like fleet battle base. So whenever they did have fleet battles, that was kind of where players could respawn and whatnot. But for the most part, there really is no reasoning to actually have the ship in the game. And that really goes for all ships. And I think it actually is a good thing that CIG doesn't create ships that they aren't creating gameplay for on the side. Because what really is the point of having the ship at that point if the gameplay that you really bought it for isn't going to be in the game? And it really is super frustrating because honestly, I'm not even including the ships by themselves, but a lot of the gameplay that we are waiting for some of these ships, like Bounty Hunting V2, is stuff that would just across the board be really nice to have in the game. It's not just because I want my Zeus Amar, which is the only ship I own. I would love to have that ship so I could actually participate in Bounty Hunting V2. But even if it was just in the game by itself, I would love to experience that gameplay because it's a more depthful bounty hunting system. But again, like most of the gameplay systems we actually have in Star Citizen, they lack a lot of depth. And this easily has to be one of the most frustrating aspects of the project for me personally, has just been the lack of genuine gameplay development over the past few years. Now, again, don't get me wrong, 2025 has been great for content. We've got a bunch of sandbox activity, some kind of theme parky stuff, and then of course we've had a bunch of narrative stuff, which across the board, this is some good stuff. I mean, it's kept us going for 2025, and I'm sure it's going to in the future, but just we really haven't seen many of those systems that we've been really waiting for make any progress in quite some time. I think we've obviously seen this for gameplay systems that are actually in the game currently. We obviously talked about bounty hunting, salvaging, mining, hauling, all of these different gameplay loops we currently have so much more room to actually grow and develop into a depthful gameplay system. But then we also have gameplay systems that aren't even in the game at all. Things like passenger transport, which we have ships waiting on for so long at this point. And passenger transport, I mean, I have no idea when that's releasing, but I cannot imagine it is any time soon. And it's just one of those annoying realities of Star Citizen is that it just takes time to get these things out. And especially with Squadron 42 taking up resources from Star Citizen, I just really can't see a lot of these things releasing in even the next couple of years, which really sucks to say, but it's just kind of how it is with this game. I don't necessarily want CIG to push back gameplay systems, but I do think them not actually putting out ships that are waiting on gameplay systems is still a good thing. As much as I would love to walk through the E1 spirit, see how cool it looks, and kind of imagine the possible gameplay opportunities, I don't think that's really helpful for the game because it just has no practical purpose within the verse, and it would really just sit around waiting for gameplay to be developed for it. Now, I do think it is a good thing, though, that CIG has been focusing on getting ships out the door that have some form of gameplay in the verse currently, even if it isn't the most depthful. And this goes for ships like the Perseus, which technically was in the backlog for a couple of years, and we are seeing release in November. There really wasn't much holding that ship back, and I'm glad to see it in the verse, even if it's not going to be able to do everything we want it to do currently with the gameplay systems we have. I think it's still going to make use of them enough to the point where the owners of that ship will be able to actually use the ship and enjoy it for the most part. So we've kind of gone into the idea of gameplay systems delaying ships, and that's not necessarily a good thing for the gameplay side of things. But again, in my opinion, I do think it's better that we have more ships in the game that have some sort of functionality within the verse rather than, obviously ships like the 890 jump or whatever that don't really do much other than just kind of look pretty and move you around from one place to the other. So I do think that's a good thing, even if it just really sucks for the people that are waiting on backlog ships. Now, for this next reason, it's not necessarily a reason as to why you haven't seen your ship, but it actually is kind of a reason why you might not want to see it quite yet. And that kind of goes along with the Apollo's release. Now, don't get me wrong, the Apollo has been in the backlog for quite some time, I think 7 years at this point, and I'm glad to see it actually hit the verse. And given the fact that we have some medical gameplay, I do technically think it's a decent addition simply because we have some form of it. But at the same time, what I will say is that getting the Apollo now means you get to experience the ship at like half of its capabilities until we actually get updated medical gameplay. And this is just one of those, again, unfortunate realities of Star Citizen, but medical gameplay is probably not going to get updated for quite some time. As much as I like the changes we have currently, they're really not much better than just kind of changing how respawns work a little bit and how healing works. It doesn't do much to add depth to the system, rather than just adding a couple more complexities that do in fact help, I think, overall, but don't really provide anything to the player or the players that are trying to actually experience medical gameplay. Again, it's not me saying that you want to wait for another like 2 years for your ship, but what I will say is that if you originally, bought the ship in concept and what really excited you was the gameplay that had to do with that ship, there's a good chance you're going to be disappointed for quite some time until the gameplay teams actually create some decent gameplay systems for medical gameplay and really all the other gameplay systems that are needed for the backlog ships. Now, one thing I will say is that the ship team is completely independent of all these other teams. They simply create these ships. They obviously work with these other teams to make sure that all the gameplay and features and whatnot line up. But What I will say is that, for the Apollo, everyone that was making the Apollo wasn't in charge of creating, more in-depth medical gameplay. They were just simply making the Apollo. So, it's one of those things. They obviously need to do things, and I think them pushing out ships rather than waiting for gameplay is better than anything. But I will say is that if you again are waiting for depthful gameplay to go along with these ships, there's a good chance you won't see that for quite some time. And that's really where I want to wrap it up for this video. I think a good rule of thumb here is that the ship is waiting on the gameplay. The gameplay is not waiting on the ship. So if you're ever curious as to where your ship is at from however many are in the backlog, just consider what the gameplay that's associated with that ship is actually at in terms of development. And then you'll probably get a pretty good answer as to where your ship is at. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this because I know a ton of people have different opinions on these as to whether or not they would just rather have the ship in game by itself with no gameplay or wait until the gameplay is fully ready to actually get their ship. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below. That really is all for today. Thank you so much again for watching the video. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you in the next video.